Buckle up for 2 hours.
No. No, 2 hours.
Ready? Let's call the October 5th, 2020 meeting of the Dalton City Council to order. Mr. Wall will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to
The flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The agenda is before you. One item that we need to take off is number 3 at the request of the parties. Other than that, are there any other changes in the agenda? Do you hear a motion we approve the agenda? Motion by Ms. Harlan, is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Goodley. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, like sign. This is the time on the agenda we allow the public time to speak on
City Council
or anything else in the city of Dalton on your mind. Nope. Under new business, no, I'm sorry, under minutes, the minutes were before you from the September 21st, 2020 meeting. Any changes, additions, deletions? Is there a motion to be approved?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Cruz, is there a second? Second. Second by Ms. Harlan, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Under new business, ordinance 20-15, recommendation regarding the request of Brian Spence to rezone from low-density single-family residential R2 to medium-density single-family residential R3, attractive land totaling 1.56 acres located at Chattanooga Avenue and Chenille Drive. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If y'all have a look at your reports from the staff analysis and the Planning Commission meeting, I'll make this very brief. Essentially, the staff analysis, first step in the process, we kind of looked around and investigated the properties from the comprehensive plan to the existing and surrounding development in this area, its current zoning, its previous zoning, and so forth, and its suitability to be developed into residential use, particularly of this density. Staff found no conflict.
Somebody loves me.
With the surrounding character in this area and what is being proposed. So the lot densities, the type of housing, and just the nature of the R3 single family medium density zone district. The two things the staff made a note of in the analysis were the point of access to the property. Of course, this property came up roughly a year ago for rezoning. It was general commercial. It was rezoned to R2 conditional. The conditions that were on the property, the primary condition was that the point of access to the proposed new parcels be along the alleyway along the eastern side of that parcel. And that stretches essentially the entirety of that parcel. Some issues were found in that alleyway that it was not entirely in the city's possession to the degree necessary. And essentially the requirement in the subdivision regulations for an alleyway to be suitable as an access to develop tracks needs to be 20 feet wide, need 20 feet of right of way. Right now, currently, as we understand it, there's only 5 feet of right of way. So it was a condition that if the rezoning were to be approved, that the developer petitioner would then, as part of the rezoning, deed over the additional 15 feet along that eastern boundary of the property to satisfy that 20-foot right-of-way for access. And that's because access to Chattanooga Avenue is ill-advised. The other condition or the other point the staff wanted to make on this property that created a little bit of concern from staff perspective just in the development pattern was that this property is impacted by the flood zone, particularly the 1% 100-year floodplain. And the petitioner did provide us with an updated schematic, a plat showing that FEMA floodplain was a little bit off. So they've got a more accurate engineering drawing that shows the floodplain does not affect the subject property to the degree that you all see in the staff analysis, where we have the county GIS floodplain file overlay, as well as the FEMA overlay, which of course is what our county files are based on. So that degree, that floodplain is a lesser degree than what you all see in the staff analysis. And you can see that on the plat that was attached. And with that being said, there is still likely one parcel to the southern portion of the property. As you see, the property narrows and tapers, and that floodplain does affect that lower portion of the property. And so it was the staff's opinion that developing property within the flood zone, although it's possible and can be done, would be an ill-advised thing to do. The Planning Commission, however, voted unanimously to approve the rezoning as it was requested. There was no opposition in the public hearing from any surrounding or adjacent property owners. And the petitioner did state that he was willing to, of course, follow through with any deed requirements for the alleyway access to make that an option in order to create that access point and solve that problem. I'll just make one quick point that if the rezoning is to be approved, it would be very important to include the condition in regard to the alleyway access and that right-of-way deed for that 15 feet of additional right-of-way to be added to the existing alleyway. I think that would be a good condition to add to that. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Who would be responsible for, I guess, widening the road? Would that be on the city or would that be on the petitioner?
That's a good question. The road that is there, I believe, is probably sufficient. Andrew can answer that a little bit.
Yes, so Councilman Goodlatte, the pavement width itself is already sufficient. It's just that that pavement width is not within the right-of-way. We only have a 5-foot right-of-way that's on the rear of the properties on Factory Street. So all we're asking for is the applicant to donate or dedicate that additional 15 feet so that that existing pavement width would be in the right-of-way. And in addition to that, what we're looking at with the police department is taking a traffic control change for city council consideration to make it one way because it's not currently wide enough for two-way traffic. So if the council approves, we will request at a later date to take that alley to one way.
Andrew, do you have any issues with this?
No, sir. The applicant has, as long as they donate the 15 feet so that we'll have a full 20-foot right-of-way per zoning ordinance, that meets our needs. In addition to that, as Ethan said, they hired their own surveyor to certify that the elevation of those lots was higher than what FEMA was showing. And so I think 7 out of the 8 proposed lots are higher than the base flood elevation. So that would be like developing any normal property.
Can we get the petitioner to come? I got a question for him also.
And yeah, Brian, you can come out.
What actually changed? Like it was commercial and we gave the R3 last year. Now it's, you want to go R2. What made it change? Why not R3?
That's what I'm asking for is R3. I'm R2 already.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. Why not R2? Why R3? I'm sorry about that.
Why R3? I'm asking for it. Is that what you, lots, number of lots goes from 3 to 7.
So you can,
Are you going to build on the southernmost lot, Mr. Spence? The southernmost lot, when we talked last year, I think it was referred to as the 8th lot.
Yeah, I probably will. But I mean, as far as building in a flood zone, all you have to do is carry flood insurance. And there's different levels of, I guess, as far as price wise on flood insurance, depending on what is it, XA on the flood zone. But anyway, you just got to carry flood insurance is basically all it is.
I'm just talking about that's like basically 7,500 square feet, that most southern just portion, Andrew, that we had such a concern with when we looked at this in depth last year.
In order to develop that lot, the applicant will have to go through and meet the city's floodplain management ordinance. There will be a review from the building inspector. It can be done, but as The applicant has stated there will be a requirement of flood insurance, and they will have to certify a no-rise condition that they're not going to cause an increase in the base flood elevation. So he'll have to do some more due diligence work if he develops that 8th lot.
That's what my concern is, Mr. Spence. It's just that very little southernmost tip. That's my only concern, because you're complying with the request of, the setbacks and everything else.
But basically in the building side of it, I just gotta keep most of your mechanical stuff above it, foundation and stuff like that. I mean, it's not as hard or as everybody.
But the building inspector's office would be responsible for compliance and
Yes,
education even, and just explain that southern lot sounds like has different needs than the northern lots.
The building inspector is the city's floodplain manager, so he would be responsible for making sure the ordinance is satisfied.
So this question might be for you, Gandy. Is that on the seller or the builder? Like if a real estate company is selling a house that's in the floodplain, who's pretty much going to be responsible for that?
So in a traditional real estate residential closing, the title company and bank loan officers, that part of the closing would be a certification as to whether or not property is in the flood zone. As soon as that is identified, then part of the closing package would be the requirement to buy flood insurance. So that would happen at closing, would be the buyer's responsibility, but that would be disclosed by the attorneys and banks.
And plus, I'll have to provide a certificate where there's a house spot showing that all the, stuff is out of the flood, is built higher than the flood zone.
So basically what we're doing tonight would be reviewing whether or not we're going to give the green light on the parcels, with the exception of that one that would have to come back before us or whomever that actually get permission to build on that. Is that what I understand?
But it should be.
Yeah, it would not come back before the city council. It would be up to the building inspector to
Okay.
review the permit request.
Which is the same with the other 7 lots too.
Yeah.
And still has to meet the building inspector. So
I will mention that back at the Easter weekend rain event, this localized area experienced a lot of flooding. The archives building got flooded. Some other properties nearby got flooded, but there did not appear to be any floodwaters on this track. I saw it firsthand. I was there about 5:30 in the morning. So I think definitely the 7 out of 8 lots is going to be okay. And then the 8th one, as long as they certify that they're not creating a no-rise, then that should be okay too, assuming the building inspector reviews it and agrees with that, since he's our floodplain manager.
I'm comfortable with it, fellow mayor and council members, if there's going to be accountability from the building inspector. I understand there would be willingness and compliance from you, Mr. Spence. So I don't have a question about that. I'm just concerned that we looked at this in such detail last year. 100-year flood studies. I mean, I have to, give them some, think of them, they have to mean something, and the staff voting against it, I take pause and just want to make sure that there's some processes in place, and I'm satisfied that there are processes in place from the building inspector, that you may just have to do a little bit different work for that southernmost lot.
I understand.
What is the square footage intention that you have for the houses?
For the houses, probably anywhere from 1,350 to probably 1,800. They're going to be more you've seen the one on Walden Avenue on Stoneleigh, more like that.
Okay. What about a buffer at the northernmost lot to that commercial property? Are you going to put up any kind of
I probably will put up a fence, yeah.
trees or something?
Yeah, trees, probably trees. Yeah.
That's not a requirement. Is that right? Buffers.
I think that's probably better answered by Ethan.
Yes, that is correct. That's not a requirement. That would need, that would need to be on behalf of the developer or as a condition.
That arises from the point that the adjacent property is already zoned. This is subject property. So if it was the other way around, then both would be required.
I don't have any other questions. So.
any other questions? Your motion on this?
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Cruz, there's a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Under number 4, professional services agreement with Richards and Associates Engineering, Inc. for site design services on Brookwood Drive flood storage project. Andrew?
Mr. Mayor, in fitting with our effort to put together a comprehensive plan to start tackling some of the city's stormwater issues, I'm asking for approval on a professional services agreement with Richards and Associates to provide site design storage for the floodplain storage project that's been reviewed by the Public Works Committee on Brookwood Drive. This project will involve creating about 30,000 cubic feet of floodplain storage in a much needed area and rerouting some existing storm drains within the right-of-way to mitigate several different drainage issues some local residents are having and have had for the last few years. The design services will cost $6,500, and this will be fully funded by the 2015 SPLOST, which has about $1.3 million available for stormwater improvements. And we'll add that Richard and Associates recently completed a design for us at Covey Ridge subdivision, a regional pond, and they delivered their package very quickly, and it was in very good quality.
What do you estimate this is going to cost from start to finish?
Start to finish, there will be right-of-way acquisition. This project will involve the take of one single-family residence. And so when you consider that, design and construction, we're probably approaching 400,000, 350 to 400,000 total.
Any other questions, Andrew?
I do have a small question, Andrew. As far as like the water retention thing there, will there be anything that creates any encumbrances on the neighbors, such as more mosquitoes, anything like that, or is there a way to address that?
We will design it in a way to minimize that because we understand that's an obvious concern, but in a lot of the issues they're having, I think their adjacent neighbors will be very amenable to us pursuing this project, and we'll work with our right-of-way division to make sure we mitigate those type of issues.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on this?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Goodletts, is there a second? Second by Mr. Wall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 5, agreement with Jacqueline Killings LLC to provide community engagement services. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a professional services agreement between the city and Jacqueline Killings LLC for a 9-month period, about 20 hours per week, total of $16,500. Some of the duties include evaluation of some of the current city processes and organizational components, comparing to recognized best practices and offering feedback recommendations. In addition to that, additional duties and resources for public safety interactions with city residents with mental illness, also assisting the city in developing additional methods for communication and feedback from the community, as well as collaborating with youth service organizations to find efficiencies and connecting those entities with public and private sources to improve the city's recruitment efforts and to improve civic participation, especially as it relates to engagement with the youth in the community. Be happy to answer any questions Mayor and Council may have.
Any questions of Jason?
Is this something that arose, obviously, come about? Did it arise through the Public Safety Commission in addressing concerns or the public safety officers that we had, or?
I think it came about as a result of several meetings we had in the community and just the concern that we as a city are able to communicate with individuals in the community. Specifically, I know that the public safety officers in particular, although this is not limited to the public safety departments, encounter individuals with mental illness on a frequent basis. And typically there are no resources in the community other than an evaluation at the emergency room, which is sometimes short-lived, 72 hours at most. Those individuals are back in the community. So in some ways it's a way to connect that. And it's a way to respond to the local community. I know that we've encountered concerns locally about individuals who are able to find information about city services. And so being able to have that additional channel of communication, I think will be very helpful. And we feel like the public safety services, both police and fire, are in good shape in the city, but this gives us the opportunity to take a look at that and see if there are any recommendations that are there.
Okay, I guess then the providing written reports for all the project assignments include detailed explanation of activities as well as recommendations. I guess those recommendations are just up to us to decide whether we want to implement them or not.
Yes, sure, absolutely. I think the important factor for me there is that the recognized best practices based on the specific city department or discipline would be the key factor there. In other words, an established standard that's already there.
I would add, Derek, that it's my opinion that Ms. Killings is going to find that we have excellent best practices, but it's how do we communicate that, and that assumptions are not made about our municipality that are made and that are proven to be negative in other parts of the country. And it did candidly arise too from just a spirit of transparency as there's been social unrest across our country. We do a tireless job, I think, at exercising best practices, but we don't do as good of a job as is possible to communicate it to all citizens, particularly young adults, that college age group that are so passionate, but we have to find a way to communicate better. So there's definitely a component of youth engagement, but communication, I think, is what I personally see as the area of improvement.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on this? Motion by Ms. Harlan, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Any other business become before this body?
Mr. Mayor, I think somebody had a birthday, was it last week, that we need to sing happy birthday to, the mayor's birthday.
Wasn't last week. That was y'all missed your chance.
It's the
That was a long
weekend
time
before,
ago.
so I think we need to, we need to
That was
give
a
a
long
happy
time
birthday
ago.
song to Mr.
There,
Mayor.
a motion we adjourn. Go ahead. You missed your chance a long time ago.
We don't miss it.